Hello, hello, hello. How is everyone doing today? It is hump day, Wednesday in the house, wet, wet Wednesday. How is this day gonna be better than the next day or the past days? It's a bit sunny in the sunshine state here, and I have my shades on because my eyes are very sensitive. I'm a very sensitive being. Of course we are. Nobody wants to be called insensitive, right? Hence the topic. Sensitivity means that you feel. When you feel, it seems real, right? So, first off, make sure you got something to drink. This one's going deep. Let me know you can hear me well. I have my mic on over here. I really felt compelled to come on today. We've got a chocolate smoothie because it's all about drinking it up the healthy way. This one's for you, baby. Here's what I've been feeling compelled for in the past 24 hours, and especially because it's been coming up for the past couple days. What doesn't break you will make you, okay? That's one topic. I could go on. There's so many different things that have been popping up into my awareness. Sitting in my meditation, all these thoughts, all these feelings, all these old past patterns and beliefs that I had to deal with and live through. I moved around a lot when I was a child. I was born in Boston. My parents took us up to Maine because the crime was so bad in Boston. They wanted us to have a safe childhood. They wanted us to be able to be in nature, to live without worrying about us crossing the street. And I really do believe people think the small towns are always the best places for people, and because it's less people and you know everybody, or so you think you know everybody. Because isn't that kind of like the generalization would be, well, if it's a small town, at least I know who my neighbor is, but you never really know anybody. You actually end up assuming and projecting your own personal experiences and beliefs upon those other people in your space, in your sphere. And if you have never moved, if you've only ever lived in one place at one time in your life, you really can't appreciate what it's like being the outsider now, can you? Unless, of course, you never felt like you were at home in your own space, and then you're one of those people who will normally want to seek elsewhere and live elsewhere, because we're all trying to find our way home, right? Where will we fit in? What will nourish us? What will support us in our growth? Where are we feeling called to be? And nobody should be trying to judge you, bully you, or tell you where you do or don't belong, because that's in you and your heart, right? Bullying is really a deeper issue, but we get upset because we see the bully and the force, that powerful person who is truly actually powerless. Because it appears to be powerful because they're exercising strong will. They're exercising what is force down upon others, trying to find and seek validation by seeking those who will support them, make them feel validated in their behaviors. See, the thing about bullying I've learned is that if you are a bully, or if you've ever tried to manipulate in any form, it doesn't even always show up in that extreme version of bullying, because some of us, we've been manipulative in our lives. We were subtle in the bullying tactic. But bullying is really just a mask for fear, for self-loathing, right? Low self-esteem. People who bully have typically been bullied. Is there anyone out there who's ever been bullied? Have you been bullied? Do you remember what that felt like? And if you grew up in an environment that was all about bullying, picking on others that were less than you, or so it would make you feel better about yourself. Or maybe you witnessed it with parents or family members. There's all different ways it shows up. And to tear someone down just to build yourself up is one of the saddest ways that you can interact and utilize engagement with another person. This life is about relationship, and what are we trying to harvest? What is it that's your purpose in life that you would ever, why would anybody ever want to break someone or make them feel less than their worth unless we ourselves feel less than that? The bully is really the hurting person, right? So hurt people hurt people. And then you need to be compassionate in a way to recognize that. You need to understand this person is coming from a space of pain. When someone is in such deep pain, like an animal, even example, right? You see, a snake is a great example. If a snake has been attacked and it's coiled up and it's shivering and it's just darting out because it's in pain or it's hurt in some way, they're looking to protect themselves. But when that coping mechanism is on full fight or flight mode, this is the role of a bully. They're constantly attacking out to avoid being attacked. Right? It's kind of like sending out that warning sign that says, move away from this object. It will harm you. It's a danger sign. Because at least in that way, they don't have to worry about rejecting, because they're already rejecting. Beating someone else down so they're not beaten down. It appears to be like they're in power or in control, was really the ultimate. And the reality is they are just seeking to appear for what lacks within. The fears that drive bullying are the same fears that most of us all have. And those are simple fears of feeling we're going to be rejected or not loved for who we are. It's probably the biggest one. Nobody wants to be rejected. Everybody wants love. And sometimes that form of love to the bully who only knows that form, because that's the environment they've only ever known. We're talking an extreme bully here, for example. Will tear others down because they realize, and they don't realize, they don't see with their real eyes. They only see through their filtered lens. And that filtered lens says, we can't allow our weaknesses to be seen, so we will cover them up with this mask of power. I will beat you down so that I feel better, or I feel more than you. Because at least then I have some semblance of control over my life. But we don't. None of us do. And whoever beat you or bullied you to create that sense that you need to bully others, it's a cycle, it's a legacy, and it's passed on generationally. It's passed on throughout the lineage, in the sense that the only way you can heal it is if you can be willing to recognize that hurt child within yourself. And for those of us who witness it and see it in other people, we should be able to discern. We need to be able to discern and be with compassion. This is not there is no right way to handle. But see, bullying is also showing up to signal us to look within. If someone bullies us, what am I doing to myself in my inner dialogue? Do I bully myself? Do I beat myself up? Am I drawing this kind of energy toward myself? That person's always going to give you that opportunity to grow. And they're also being given the opportunity. But the question is whether or not they recognize it. So when someone is bullying, you don't even have to respond or react. Though sometimes they will make it more difficult. It just depends on at what level. the growth and the evolution within us needs to happen, right? Sometimes it's us learning better communication styles. I know for myself, I was scrappy. Like, I was very defensive of myself. I wouldn't let someone bully me, and I'd be just the first one to jump on to defend myself and others. Because nobody deserves to be put down. We should all be uplifting one another. We should all be elevating each person that we encounter more so that they can walk with a high head and not cower down with their head hanging low. I know that to find compassion for someone who's being cruel and mean is difficult. But the reality is that's the only way we're going to heal, is if we do different than what we've done before. If I jumped into my old role of defense and played into the victimhood story, because that's what happens when we're defending ourselves, is we're really just feeling like victims. Nobody needs to defend themselves. Nobody needs to explain themselves to anyone. It's only to ourselves that we need to be good and comfortable with our choices and our behaviors. And if someone is extremely mean on the external, that means their inner dialogue is that much more amplified on the inside. My mother used to say, I never understood why there would be these women that were what she called the bitter old women. And then she said, as I've gotten older, I started to understand why. And she says, I have so much compassion. She says, I never wanted to be like that. Because the bitterness on the outside just can only mean how much more bitter is on the inside, because what you see on the outside is usually just a small, minute glimmer into what's going on that inner dialogue. When people attack on the outside, they're typically coming from a place of victimhood, just like that snake that's been hurt and is coiled up, seeking a way to protect itself. And so that's all they know, is to speak from unloving words, because maybe that's all they've ever heard. And to learn a new way of doing and speaking and saying and being, it takes dedication, devotion. It takes true compassion for yourself and love. Sometimes it takes us breaking down to break through all of that, all the stories, all the drama, all the trauma. But bullying is really a signal that person is hurting. And they will try to surround themselves with their biggest fans, their biggest supporters, who will enable their behavior. And some of us have enabled people. We have stood behind people that we look back and go, I didn't necessarily agree. I was just playing into my loyalty. Friends, family, were depending on what you were raised with for loyalty. Maybe you're the type of person who family mattered so much that it didn't matter what they did, but you'd be right behind them, beating up or supporting or defending them, because that's what you did. In my family, to a certain degree, that is exactly what we do. We rally around and support one another. But you know what? We also know, in my family at least, we know tough love. And I don't mean the type that is bullying. It's the type that says, you know yourself, you made a mistake, and that wasn't necessarily the best behavior. We say it out of love because we care, but we're not trying to beat them up. And typically the best way to handle it is to question, ask questions, be more willing to dive deeper into communication. If someone is saying something that might not sound so kind, you can easily ask, is this really what you meant? And repeating it back to them, reflective listening. This is what I heard, is it what you meant? Sometimes that reflective listening and speaking gives that person an opportunity to check themselves. And the more mindful you can be with your own self-talk, you'll see it with others as they speak it outside and externally. And so when we engage in conversation and maybe something does not agree with you, don't feel like you have to hold it in, but be willing to open your mouth and say, you know, I love you, but here's what I heard, and it didn't feel very good. And it doesn't hurt to also recognize, where in your body did you feel that? You know, ooh, that really brought my stomach up, and ooh, I felt it in my heart. Ooh, that felt heavy on my shoulders. Because the only way we're ever going to relate to one another is when we start working on relating to ourselves and our bodies, that we are willing to listen, sit and truly listen and reflect back to those people that we're listening to, and allow them the opportunity to grow through the engagement, the communication that we have, the dialogues. Because bullying is something, it's an epidemic. We have a lot of it going on, and I think most of it is the fact that so many people are freaking out because they don't know what's going on, or maybe they're not happy in their lives, and we get into self-destructive mode, right? I've been there, I've done that. And so when things are at their worst, what happens? Let me just throw it on into the fire. I can't get any worse. Let's go for it. Let's just burn this baby down, right? Who's all done that? Who's been there? Have you been a bully? Have you been bullied? Let me know in the comments. Because it takes a lot of owning up. I know I've bullied in my lifetime. I've been manipulative. I'm no angel. None of us are. But if I didn't recognize it and I continued with that behavior, that would be on me. And I'm the one who has to live with that. But owning it and appreciating how it showed me what worked and didn't work, and what felt good and what didn't feel good, honestly, I wouldn't want to have to live a life of constantly considering how mean, because that's a festering within, right? If you're festering within, if you are so angry and upset with yourself that you're projecting it onto other people, telling them what you think about them, and putting them down and creating stories just to make them smaller than yourself, is really making you smaller yourself. You're the small one. You're the powerless one. You think you've got power, but all you're doing is forcing your will upon someone else. And so I want to go back to being the outsider, because here's where I'm finding that in my life, I have a beautiful story actually. Having been born, and I started out in the beginning, having been born in Boston, Massachusetts, I came from a big family, 3 sisters total, me, my sisters, 2 sisters, plus I have a half brother and a half sister, but I didn't know about them till I was about 12 or 13. My family decided, because the crime in Boston was so bad, that we would move to a small town. And so here's the thing about small towns, as I was stating in the beginning. Small towns. If you've lived in a small town, you know small towns have their skeletons. They are not as, oh, everybody knows everybody. If anything, I found just this small example of having moved to a small town from a big city. There's too many busybodies. There's too many I know what you don't know. There's too much rumor, creating stories that aren't even real. Making people feel uncomfortable instead of welcoming them in with an open heart. And why do we do that? Why would anybody do that? Because misery loves company? Because you're miserable, you just want to make sure that other people are miserable? We need to heal. We have to stop the bullying. We have to stop the creating stories that don't exist, or pushing people out that want to fit in, that are looking for a place to call home. Because guess what? If we went somewhere else, any of us, when you relocate to another area, or you travel, if you've never traveled in your life, now you know you're sheltered because you've never had to experience adapting to a new environment. Going to someone else's home and hoping that they would welcome you. It's really something to be humbled by when you go into another country, you step foot on new soil, new land, new air, new water, new food, new experiences, cultures. We can't expect everyone to know the customs, but if anything, we can welcome people into our land with loving arms, open arms, extended hands to shake and greet. Big hugs, people, come on. You know, some people can sit there and maybe you're miserable and you're looking at me and you're thinking, what has she got to say that she could tell me? I'm miserable. You know, like you don't even notice sometimes when you're so deep in your misery, your passive aggressive behavior can turn into, oh, she's just talking, whatever. She doesn't know, it's not real. And I get that, I hear that. I've heard that, I've said that. I've been there, I've done that. I've been on the other end when someone was telling me just be happy. Don't let them steal your joy. Because I've been there, I've been bullied. And then I had to sit there and go, ooh, yeah, how am I giving that away? But during the time, I really truly was like, who are you to tell me? Did you not see my life? You don't live my life. You don't understand where I'm coming from. Like I was validating and justifying. I had excuses, not a reason. I had excuses. See the difference between an excuse and a reason? An excuse is something made up in your head. This is all internal work. You have control over an excuse. A reason is you have no control over it whatsoever. It is outside of your control. It is in your environment. It is in your exterior area. You have no control over it. It's little things like a storm coming in. You have no control over the storm, but what you do have control over is your reaction and response to it. And that storm should, if anything, as symbolic as a storm could be, remind you that we don't call all the shots and that we can move through with grace and ease and allow it to create evolution within us because we are going to be challenged at every point in our lives. As outsiders or people who have always been in the same environment, we can choose how that environment is. And I know from myself, if I live in a place, I want people to visit and go, I had the most amazing experience because that place was amazing. Not, I had a shitty experience, I had a horrible time because people did not like me when they looked at me. People had preconceived ideas and judgments about me. I mean, does anybody want to go anywhere where they're not welcome? And it happens in many cultures, don't get me wrong. But if you're someone who's in a place of peace within yourself, and I find for myself when I travel, I rarely encounter people who are nasty, mean, or push me away, or try to make me feel like crap. I've always felt, whenever I've traveled, honestly, because I love to travel, I've always felt welcomed with open arms. And I think it's because I learned to adapt at an early age. And because I did move around a lot as a child, because my parents moved us from Massachusetts to Maine, from Maine to Florida, from Florida to New York, from New York to Florida, from Florida back up to Maine. I mean, crazy stuff. I went to 3 different high schools in, 3 different states. And I am very grateful for those experiences because those are the experiences I needed to shape and mold me, to allow me to be a chameleon in whatever environment I end up in. I feel I could fit in anywhere I go, and I feel comfortable. I choose my environments, though. That's the only other key there, because as a woman, I'm not going to go in somewhere where I'm going to feel uncomfortable or my life is threatened or my security or my safety is threatened. I'm going to continue to be smart and discern what feels good and what feels not so good. If it doesn't resonate with me, if it doesn't jive, I'm not going to expose myself unnecessarily to a harsh or hostile environment. And so that's part of our lesson in traversing this life, I believe, is that if something you feel, again, I'm always going to go back to the feeling it to heal it. If you can feel into all of your senses, you can recognize what it is that's coming up for you. Ooh, that didn't feel good. It's in my stomach. It's up in my heart. It feels heavy. I can't breathe. Whatever comes up for you, bully or being bullied. The only way we're going to heal and we're going to come together in unity, commune, in union, community, is if we're willing to accept those we want to reject and recognize the rejecting them is rejecting ourselves. No matter who you are, and I know I've done it, you push people away, you really want to pull them in. But there's something wired within us sometimes from our past, from our traumas, our experiences, that says, I can't allow that person to come into my life the way I really want him to, because that's just not the way I was taught. That's not the way I was raised. I was raised to make people work at it. They need to deserve it. They need to show me. They need to validate themselves so I can allow and accept them. Instead of recognizing that really, there's no need. You don't need an excuse or a reason to allow someone to be kind to them, to be open to receiving as well as giving, and vice versa. Why do we need reasons and excuses to open our hearts and our arms and our hands? What has anybody not done or done to us that really justifies all this, oh no, they can't, I can't, this resistance? We all truly just want love. I don't care who you are. Love is in our hearts, in our souls, in our being, in our DNA, it's in our cells. It's just who we are. The more we reject, the more we miss out on. And when there are people who are willing and open to give you love, I know sometimes it's hard if you're not used to receiving it. And it feels uncomfortable because it's not familiar. But it's just discerning. Do you notice that you push away the good stuff that really feels good because you're only comfortable with what felt bad because that was more familiar? That's where a lot of our abusive and addictive patterns come from, is just the familiarity of it. The ego mind gets upset when it can't control or know how things are going to turn out, because it's like, wait a minute here. I don't recognize this. It doesn't feel like anything I've ever experienced. Yeah. And, bullies are wanting love just as much as anyone else, and they're just trying to find their way. And I think that when I've been growing up, and I in the past, I would bounce back. I would just be like, don't you start with me. I would stand my ground. There's a different way you can stand your ground, by holding sacred space and allowing them to be caught off guard in a loving way. It's a chocolate day. Nobody's better than another person is really the bottom line. If someone is bullying you, I don't care in whatever form it is, sometimes they won't do it to your face because they don't have that. They're really not that empowered. And we have social media. It's probably the easiest way for people to bully and hide behind a screen. Or just gossip, right? Nobody likes to own up. Oh, I can't speak about who I heard this from, but, this is the rumor I heard. Remember something. If someone's talking crap about you, if they're gossiping about you, what that is doing is it's clearing your karma, baby, and building theirs up. Try to remember that. And try to remember it's none of your business what someone else thinks of you, speaks of you. Stay your ground and stay in your personal power, because the moment you care and you react to the other person who is trying to tear you down, you have given them your power. Don't feed it. Don't feed the bully. But love that hurt inner child, because that's what's really going on, is when someone is bullying, it's showing you their trauma on an amplified wave. So instead of reacting to a bully, you can learn kind ways of saying, I understand you don't know me, or you don't know this, and you don't know that, but the bottom line is this. I value you and your opinion. Thank you. That's enough. You don't have to even say that. I have, I love that, Sandy. My karma's been cleared big time. Yeah, I hear you. And I know mine has. When you're in social media, I'm not even going to talk about anything in particular for what Tom and I do behind the scenes, because I don't think that's necessary. We've had various conversations where I said, you got to remember we're exposed. So no matter what happens, it's none of our business. And even if someone were or does reach out to us and they have unkind words, I love you anyway, because I understand those unkind words aren't about me or, whoever in our crew, right? Because kindness matters most. And even if you don't like someone or you disagree with them, you can still say things in a way that is kind and not tearing them down. There's a lot of stories that this mind will create so that it can feel all, again, empowered and powerful. If I have a story about you, oh, look at me, I know something. And that's where gossip and rumors are the biggest problem in our culture, our lives, is we put more weight and value on things we're not, what people are talking about, than what we truly are. So instead of reacting or responding to a bully, pray for them. You don't even have to tell them you're praying, and that's kind of condescending too, is, oh, I'm praying for you, honey, or I'm so sorry. You don't even need to talk down. Just because someone else talks down to you, don't even feed that. Two wrongs don't make a right, okay? I grew up hearing that all my life. If someone's unkind to you, the old saying, kill them with kindness back. Because truly, in the end, they're used to the reaction. That's what fuels them. And if you come from a different way that they know, that they've always known, first off, you catch them off guard. Second, it's going to make them think. And you know what? You'll be the one that stands out in their mind the most. That person wasn't unkind to me just because I was unkind to them. Whether or not they remember it at the time or that it catches them at that moment. I've had various situations where I know that I responded differently to somebody who clearly was a bully. And I've had people come back to me and say very kind things as a result with apologies. Like I grew up, I had a lot of judgment growing up. I went to different high schools. I went to different schools. My parents moved to Maine, and the small town thought my parents came up with this rumor. My parents were escaped robbers, bank robbers, with 3 daughters. And by the way, this is a funny thing. My dad and I kind of laugh about it. They thought my mom was a man because she had a deep voice. How crazy is that? Because you don't know, you create a story. And that makes you feel like you got some semblance of control and you know something about somebody that you don't even know. Is that not crazy? It still baffles me, and we talked about it yesterday. It makes me laugh. Laugh, laugh, laugh. Ha, rah, 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 rah. My mom a bank robber, my dad a bank robber. No, that was the craziest thing. And as children, me and my sisters felt like outcasts, like, especially after we were molested by the pedophile. It's like now there was more whispering going on. Whispering about, oh, those children. And you know what hurt the most as children? Is the parents were the bullies telling their children not to hang out with us like we were bad children. Okay, that doesn't make any sense. Something bad has happened to those girls. That doesn't mean that they're bad girls or they're bad children. And that by your child hanging out with children that have gone through something traumatic like that it's going to change your child and it's going to happen to them. In fact, no. Children are still pure enough to recognize one another and say, I'm so sorry that happened to you. Was there something I can do to make you feel better? Because I remember those ages and I remember how my girlfriends were. But I also remember what it was like when, oh, I can't come over to your house. My mom doesn't want me hanging out with you too. That's how honest we are as children too, right? My mom doesn't want me hanging out with you. And you can pretty much figure out why. It's not like you have to make up a story. Has anybody out there experienced any of this growing up in their lives? Where they felt I can't even hang out with the people I get along with because they don't accept me because of some story that's not even true or real. And that as a result, now I'm the outcast because of a story that isn't even true. How many of you have moved a lot? How many of you out there have been the outsider and had to find your way in, or felt like you were so outside you had to find your way out, right? Just because we don't look and speak like others doesn't mean we can't find our inner peace. What doesn't break us will make us. And no matter what, I believe we all deserve to make our own choices without judgment, without people creating stories. So again, like bullies make up stories, don't they? Because they're trying to elevate themselves in a way that makes them feel better because they don't feel good, or they wouldn't be creating stories. And it makes them feel even better when they get people behind them that says, yeah, you're right, and they add to their stories, right? Oh, honey, Marquetta, I'm so glad this is helping you. I'd love for you to share in the group whatever it is that you feel compelled in what your story is. Ridiculously RawThentic, that's what we're here for. We're here to support one another. We're here to uplift and unite one another. The power of social media is about recognizing that you can be anywhere and you're going to find we're here. Not everybody has that in their community immediately available to them. People who will speak to them on a soul level, who will look them in the eye and make them feel seen, make them feel heard. That's all we all want, isn't it? I know I had to get there too. It's taken me years to just find my own healing. And we all need someone who can support our growth, keep us evolving, hold us sacred, hold space for us. So even for myself, as I do meditate and I have my own practice, there are times I have my own mentors I turn to. And so, yeah. Oh, honey, Angelique, I will come. You can feed me to Hawaii. I love that. I am all about the food. I love to travel because I know I get to see things through a lens and perception now than before, where maybe in the past I did have some weird things in my life. But when I traveled, those are always the most enriching times of my life, because I find I encounter the most amazing people that I learn from about myself. Yeah, I learn about them and I learn about culture, but that's how I learn about myself, is that engaging with others, having that inner and outer dialogue, because what's inside of me is what I'm experiencing outside of me, and it's that comes out in the externals with these wonderful people that come into my life, right? Have any of you experienced that? Are you a travel seeker? Do you like to try out new cultures and environments? And if you have, tell me about your experience. I want to hear about them. That's why we created the group, so that we can all learn from one another. That's how we grow. That's how we flow. So, something I was reflecting upon real quick earlier, because I did write a lot and I had so much that I was just, oh my gosh, this morning in my meditation, have you been there where your mind just gets these beautiful golden nuggets, but I don't stop my meditation, I just enjoy them and experience them and allow them to drop in. And then when I go to write them down, I'm like, what was that again? It's like, a feather, it just wisps off your cheek, and then you're going, I felt it, and then it's gone, right? I'm looking at the sky and the way the clouds are, they look like feathers right now. Nobody wins from exposing or inflicting pain upon another. Can you even imagine that it could even feel good to do that? And what I mean by that is, in the form of bullying, to expose someone's traumas, their pains, that, look at what they're going through. How does that make you feel? And how does that serve? If anything, I think when you reflect again, reflective listening, and you hear yourself, you listen to it through someone else reflects it back to you, it doesn't feel good. If someone were to say to you the things that sometimes you've said that to others, that is the best way to check yourself. What would Mr. Rogers do, right? Won't you be my neighbor? Because if you approve of being spoken to the way you speak to another, then I think you can be good most of the time. Unless, of course, you're used to negative or painful dialogues. But truly, checking ourselves first. Is it kind? Is it relevant? Is it loving? Will it uplift? Does it support? How does it serve? This life is a blessing, and I think we need to get out of our heads. Stop trying to feel like you got something to prove. Stop feeling like you got to push someone down so you can stand taller. Wars don't win. You can't have a war and expect peace to come from it. You have to come from a place of peace. Immediately, if you are upset with somebody and you want to argue about something, you are already trying to force your will upon someone else, right? And that in itself is a key. It's a key to check yourself and breathe and ask, how important is this really? Is this because of a sense of loss of power? Because do you know that is the root cause right there? You feel powerless, but maybe you don't recognize it as such. Powerless, so you feel like you have to exert power, which is really forcing, and it isn't natural. It's just that child, like I said before, it's a hurt child. It's that animal that's wounded. It's just jumping out so that it can survive. It's called coping mechanisms and survival tactics. To heal the world, we have to work on ourselves first. And if we're willing to look within, if we're willing to release sometimes even the painful hurts, we may be opening those wounds so that love can be poured into them. We all want to have fun, right? So it's a full moon, by the way. This is a great time for setting the intention of releasing what no longer serves. How can you heal? Let go. Let go of whatever it is you're holding on to, resentment, trauma, pain. Seek forgiveness of yourself for yourself. Ho'oponopono. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. I love you. Even if you feel that your mind is being unkind, recite in your mind to yourself. I do this. I'll catch myself going to a thought and I'm like, Ho'oponopono. And in that moment I say exactly the same thing. I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, I love you. To myself first, because that's the most important person I have to have peace with. If I have peace with me, I can be peaceful with others. I can hold space for others. I can be compassionate. And so if somebody is bullying or nasty toward me, I don't have to react with the same behavior. Because again, if you go into an argument with a closed fist, you're going to be met with another one. If you go in with an open hand, now you got a little bit more wiggle room. Even if the other person has a fist, you're still extending an offering of kindness. And the reality is we all want to dance this divine dance together. We don't want to be rigid. And that's in the fluidity of our thoughts first. That's a seeking, the breath, tapping into our prana, our life force. Anger, your prana is depleted. Anger is the lowest scale on the vibration. But did you know that anger is an opportunity for you to take action? That it typically moves you up in those vibrational scales? That as long as you get angry, you can recognize, I care. Because if I didn't care, I wouldn't be angry. I am sensitive if I'm angry. I'm not insensitive. We're the biggest bullies on ourselves. But the bigger bullies that are bullying others, they're the bigger bullies on the inside. And they need the most love and they need the most compassion. Doesn't mean you need to tolerate them. It doesn't mean you have to stick around and try to fix them. Just act different than the rest of the people who basically keep them stuck and enabled in their behavior. Be the person who's willing to step up and go, I'm really sorry that you feel that way. And just, sometimes it's just your presence and smiling and not dropping down into that behavior. That in itself can uplift that person. If you can hold your peace when someone else is going through the storm, that's what people need more these days. And that's, I think, really the ultimate message in all of this that I want to share with you. That even if you're an outsider and you go into someone else's space, be prepared. They're going to look with, judging eyes. I don't think it happens to us all. But even as an outsider, we also have to recognize if we're looking for something, it's because we didn't find it on the inside, right? Hence why maybe we draw bullying toward ourselves. Maybe the real bullying is because we're not allowing ourselves to accept where we're at inside, that we have to seek it in a different environment, in a different space, looking for home on the outside. But then there are a lot of us, and I'm not judging, I'm just giving examples. There are a lot of us also who feel drawn to certain areas because it really pulls at our heartstrings. We feel ourselves there. And that's good. Because only you know what is true for you, what resonates with you, what you feel on the inside, and how your life is on the outside. Those are two reflections upon one another that are dictating your life, that you can recognize and tap into at all times. So on this wet Wednesday, I'm going to go back inside, change my clothes, and I'm going to tackle the rest of this yard because I started yesterday and the battery battery died. And the sunshine is gorgeous. I hope that this video serves any and everybody who watches it in a way that you can find more compassion for yourself. And no matter who's in your life, I know we all have had at least one or two bullies in our lives, that we can really truly from our hearts send them love and show them love just by being in an example of living in love. I'm not talking about no hippie, gotta be da-da-da-da-da, love is where it's at. You know what? Just live your life authentically and be courageous enough to not have to make excuses for yourself or defend yourself. None of us are victims. We're only a victim if we are creating the story that keeps us in that mode. So be well. Get yourself some Wet Wednesday drink on. Be loving and kind to yourself. Leave everyone even better than you found them. Every place you go, better than you found it. And that people will remember not what you say or what you do, but how you made them feel. I love you all. Have an amazingly blessed day.